While at PAX Unplugged this year, I stumbled upon a new miniature war game called Star Schlock, who is not sponsoring this video, and I was instantly hooked. The game is a soup of vintage sci-fi inspiration from Star Wars and Star Trek to Lost in Space and Alien. As someone who has been painting minis for 2 decades now, and who's discovering his love for sci-fi these past several years, this game and world hooked me immediately. You can get a little bit of everything. In today's video, I'm gonna walk you through how I painted this mini from the Star Raiders A blister pack, and I'm gonna address the #1 complaint I know I'll see down in the comment section. To get started, I wanted a bit of inspiration, so I busted out some phenomenal art books that focus on vintage sci-fi art to see if I could detect any consistency from art of this genre. And beyond it just generally being amazing to me, I did have a few key takeaways. One thing I'm noticing about looking at all this sci-fi art is that it's kind of psychedelic, it's a little bit weird, but most consistently, it's very colorful. I might consider something like this a little bit gaudy, but I really want to lean into this vintage sci-fi vibe. So I'm going to go with something that I wouldn't normally do. I found a piece of art that featured a character that looked similar to my Star Raider that was suitably colorful and went with that. After a zenithal undercoat, I got straight into the red armor, which leans into its orange neighbor. I mixed some orange and red along with some brown to get a darker, more desaturated shadow to start from. I was trying to avoid developing a texture while base coating by only ever running my brush through paint that I knew was dry. This model is simple and lacks a lot of visual clutter you'd see on a modern mini, so I felt like this clean paint job made sense for this character. With the base coat complete, I moved on to applying layers of highlight, starting with the same mixture as our last coat, but with less brown this time. The beauty of a simple model is that it features simple shapes, which makes highlighting everything pretty straightforward. This guy is similar to a Space Marine in that he's composed of a lot of different cylinders, but in the case of our Star Raider, they're more pillowy and soft. I was pretty aggressive with this first layer of color, covering up a lot of that original base coat. I followed that up with an even more saturated layer of highlights, keeping everything fairly thin and not jumping up too fast in brightness. Again, I was trying to keep everything smooth and clean. With some highlights done, I decided to do something shady, like applying some shadows. Primarily with glazes of paint. I used the original base coat color I had started with to get something going, and then exaggerated my shadows with pure brown paint to get some more contrast on some of these armor panels. Often when zeroing in on a look for my models, I do a lot of back and forth, and this mini was no different. After a few soft layers of shadow, I went back to highlighting, this time mixing in some off-white yellow to get something of a peach color to add even brighter and smaller highlights. To soften the transition between this new highlight and the old midtone, I fuzzed the border with a watered down version of that midtone, a technique that I often use to get a seamless blend while layering. I might have been able to stop at this point, but I wanted to keep going. I'm actually really enjoying myself painting this red orangey armor, so I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep pushing it and just see what happens. I kept doing more of the same. Mix a brighter paint, apply a small highlight, soften the transition with a glaze. This kind of stuff is especially fun with simpler models because there's room to do transitions like this. Before I totally finish the red armor, I wanna move on to the next color, and it'll be obvious why. The art I'm using as inspiration has a lot of blue to go along with this tomato red color, so I thought I'd go there next, applying a nice navy blue. I knew painting this color in the spots I had planned would likely cause me to mess up the red armor, especially close to the edges, so I wanted to do this messier step first. With the blue blocked in, it was on to finishing the red armor, starting with a nice thin recessed shade on some of the panel lines on this dude's armor. With that done, it's time for a final edge highlight. I'm using 2 different brightnesses here. When I'm hiding an edge closer to my brighter colors, I'll use my brighter edge highlight, and for everywhere else, I'll use something darker. I hope it makes sense why I didn't do the blue base coat before my edge highlight after seeing this step. With that complete, we'll do basically those exact same steps for the blue portions of the armor. And while I do that, let's talk about this new chair that I'm sitting in from this video's sponsor. And it has a feature that I feel is perfect for miniature painters that I haven't found in any other chair. Habata has been the best seller for 3 consecutive years in Germany, France, Spain, UK, US, Japan, and China. The chair I'm currently sitting in, the E3 Pro, is the most adjustable ergonomic chair in the world, with up to 22 adjustable features. You'll find all the typical adjustments like reclining the back 140 degrees, but there are more unique options. One of those options I've never seen in another office chair is the ability to change the angle of the armrest. When angled upward, the entirety of my forearm is supported up to the edge of my desk, giving me more support than I've ever had. Truly a great feature for our hobby. Along with that adjustment, there are 5 more adjustments to these 6D adjustable armrests. Personally, I rotate my armrests inward, upward, and push them so they're a little tighter to match the width of my torso. I want to feel like I'm in an office chair straitjacket. Outside of that, the chair features a 3-zone elastic lumbar support that feels like a warm hug, which I'm sure we all need whilst sitting in our basement for weeks on end painting plastic toys. In addition, this chair also includes a 4D biaxial headrest so that you can, yet again, make this chair what works for you and your personal needs. This would be an absolutely solid piece of kit for a hobby nerd in need, and you can find a link to this chair in the description below. Thanks to Habata for sponsoring this video. Now back to painting my awesome Star Schlock Mini. One thing I want to mention about painting the blue armor is how I'm treating the chest. Even though it's a fairly flat piece, I'm highlighting it as though it's more rounded right in the center with a circular highlight right by the neck. This is simply a more interesting way to render this chest as opposed to highlighting it like it's flat. Realism isn't always the only goal with our mini painting. Often it's better to exaggerate or fabricate something more interesting. Next up, onto the leather components, which I base coat in an ochre color. I mix in more and more of that same off-white yellow from our red highlighting step to develop a highlight. But I went a little bit too bright as I lost my original ochre midtone that I wanted to show through. To fix this, I mixed some orange and brown into my ochre to get a richer shadow color that I glaze onto the bags and straps. I want this model to be really colorful, and if my highlights cover up too much of my saturated midtones, I'll lose that. I shouldn't have base coated leather with my midtone anyways. Instead, I should have started from a darker color like I've done on all the other parts so far. Next up was a feature of the concept that was my favorite, the white helmet. I first base coated the helmet in an off-white blue, which made a lot of the details difficult to see. To spot them better, I washed the helmet with a dark blue from Citadel. Unfortunately, this darkened it down a bit too much, so I spent a long time slowly and painfully building up to brighter colors with thin, patient layers, leaving behind the dark blue lines in the recesses. The reason why I enjoyed this helmet was because it was one of the few areas of the concept that lacked some color, but was also still bright. I felt that was a great choice for the character because it would draw people's attention to the face, like my attention was drawn to this game at PAX. The thing that I enjoy so much about Star Schlock is just how much it leans into the vintage aesthetic. Obviously the miniatures are inspired by the vintage sci-fi media, but it goes beyond that. The cards that have the unit stats on them come in a wax wrapper booster pack. The models are cast in pewter and furthermore sculpted after a vintage style of miniature. They could have made a modern feeling Star Trek or Star Wars style miniature, but they didn't do that. Even the sculpting itself feels vintage. I appreciate so much when a product has such a firm understanding of what it is and just completely leans into it. There's a certain confidence to me that's attractive as a buyer when a company does that. And I'm not totally sure why. Beyond this game just being a bunch of things that I already like anyways. Let's reverse time a little bit, discuss the visor, which I painted in the middle of painting the helmet, again, to avoid getting any green on the final steps of an easily ruined white helmet. I busted out my favorite green colors from TT Combat and just created a simple gradient from top to bottom. You don't often find bright highlighter green like chartreuse as a normal color in a paint range like you do with TT Combat. And combine that with the other vibrant green you see me using here, and you have a pretty great combo for a punchy OSL color. Last to do on the model was just a bit of silver TMM after a crispy black base coat, and then we can work on the base. Originally, I was just going to do something basic, but I decided to let the art that inspired the scheme also inspire the surrounding world, which in this case looks like some weird bulbous mounds or trees maybe? I replicated this by using my 2-part epoxy from Tamiya, rolling out the traditional putty snake that I cut into smaller chunks that I then rolled into balls. With a rounded tool like the back of a bent airbrush needle, I could place and depress the balls onto the base, creating a donut-like shape. Then I could keep layering this on to create this odd worm-like flora. With the putty firming up, I could paint everything with a desaturated purple. I washed the ground with more of that blue wash from before to better link the base's scheme to the models, but also to differentiate our alien plant life from the ground below. To finish off the base, I mixed one of my favorite hobby products ever, Tamiya Clear, in red and blue colors to hopefully produce a purple, and that did not work at all. I've mixed Tamiya Clears before to much greater success, but for some reason with these 2 colors, it was a complete failure. Despite that, it still looked disgusting and accomplished my alien ick related goals. With the base trim cleaned up, this Star Schlock model is finally complete, and now I'll address the #1 comment that I know I'm gonna get. Whenever I bring up a new game, I get endless comments about how people can't afford to invest their money into another war game, which makes sense. But I don't buy it. I totally understand if you can't afford to invest the money, but if you're already able to invest in other war games repeatedly, like Warhammer, and you're genuinely interested in another game, it isn't that you can't afford it, it's that you simply don't want to stop giving your money to GW. Again, I don't care what you do with your money, but most, if not all, other miniature war games require significantly less initial and repeat investment to enjoy them compared to GW. And that's even if you're the only one amongst your friends buying models for that entire game. Let's use Star Schlock as an example. The starter set for this game that comes with everything you need for 2 people to play and enjoy the game is $130 US. That's already less than the price of a starter set for a single faction in 40K. And it doesn't even come with all the models you need for 1 army, let alone 2. Playing a new miniature war game does not mean giving up on the ones you currently play. At most, it means maybe you're not buying models for your current games for a few months. I think it's important for people to try new things. One of 2 things is gonna happen. You'll either validate your current feelings about the games you play right now and have a fun one in the backlog to share with a non-hobby friend who clicks with the theme, like Star Trek more than Grimdark 40K, or you'll discover that you like it equally or more than the games you're currently playing, giving you even more ways to have fun in the hobby. Another reason I painted a Star Schlock model was because the quarterly theme for my Discord that's active right now is retro futurism. Think futuristic, but what people in the 70s thought the future would look like. On the screen right now, you can see some of my patrons' attempts. If you're interested in being involved in future quarterly challenges, you can get access to those painting themes through my Discord that you get by being a patron. And you can find my Patreon linked down in the show notes below. Patreon is a phenomenal way to support me and this channel, and I honestly can't say thank you enough to my patrons that have been with me for, some as long as 10 years. It's absolutely incredible to be able to get that kind of support from people because it allows you a consistent form of income so that you can make fun videos about weirdo model ranges like Star Schlock and not worry about the coolest, hippest thing that came out from GW all the time. That's gonna do it for this video, guys. If you want more cool hobby gifts for the season outside of the Habata chair, you can also find some on my web store, Miniac.co, where I sell a cool cutting mat right here that's double-sided, 3 mil thick, self-healing, Imperial grid on one side, metric grid on the other. You can pick up an awesome brush coffin that you can't see, it's out of frame right now. A fun way to store your brushes and other similar size tools. All things linked down in the show notes below. Along with those tools, I also have a bunch of models on my website for wood elves and vampires in a variety of scales like 75mm and 32mm and even some busts. Check them out, all linked down in the show notes below. Subscribe and most importantly, don't forget to